Yeah, it snowed last night. I had to drive home, not very far, but I had to drive home in my first kind of blizzard last night. I don't think it's going to stay, but it's supposed to turn to rain and stuff like that. So just enough to make it really wet and miserable. Miserable, miserable, miserable. Thus is winter knocking at your door. In fact, it's going to clog your door, and you won't be able to get out ever again until spring. All right, so I thought I'd make this video. I see some people covering it, and I've mentioned it a few times and stuff like that, but there's a couple of things going on here in Canada that I think most Canadians are completely oblivious. Like, I don't really think that many people watch the CBC, so they have no idea what's really going on. Right now we have this big, huge trade deal going through CETA, and if you don't know what CETA is, that's okay, because nobody does. All they tell you is, oh, it's going to be billions of dollars in trade and stuff like that. We know there's a small area in Brussels that is being a stick in the mud about it, which is probably for good reasons. And CETA is basically the kind of Trans-Pacific Trade Partnership times two, but it's more between Canada and Europe, or the European Union. And basically, like the other ones, it's not transparent. There's a whole bunch of things in it that what you can see. There's a whole bunch of things in it that are not good for Canadian sovereignty, but since when has our governments ever cared about Canadian sovereignty, right? So it's how fast can we sell the country away, rip the resources out of the ground, it's always... I agree with what Ronald Reagan said. Government has no business being in business. It shouldn't be doing trade deals. It should be setting the rules for trade deals, but let them happen naturally. Now, the reason why I don't like the idea of this thing is because it allows foreign companies and bureaucrats to sue our country and overrides our courts. And there is a challenge, a constitutional challenge on this thing. However, you won't hear about that on the CBC. That's the news out of it. The deal failed and stuff like that to be signed, but you got say, oh no, it's going to be signed now. But on the other, when you start listening to other channels and stuff like that, and other people talking about it, like, no, they're not even close to getting it signed. So there's kind of one of those things that it's been tied up for a long time. These big trade deals, I don't think are going to go through anyway. They're like an omnibus package for a trade deal. It's like take it all or take none, right? And the problem with that is that there's so many little things in there that you'd be better off to go after a few things at a time and work those out one at a time. It's a little bit slower in some ways, but at least, like for example, rather than waiting 10 years to pass one deal, you could have little deals passed every year, and that could work. I'm not against trade per se. Where I take issue is when it does, basically CETA will be worse than NAFTA. Basically, we already gave all our high-tech jobs away to over there somewhere. China, Mexico, Brazil, India. We're sending all our jobs out of the country, which is leaving us with a service sector economy, which I even remember economists back in the 80s talking about how we're going to change it to a service sector economy. But who gave them the right to do that? You know what I mean? And how did they accomplish it? Well, it's simple. You increase regulation to the point where nobody can either compete, open up their own business, or if they want to buy gas from somebody else, you increase environmental regulations here to put us out of business here. But yet you turned a blind eye to the third world country with the slave labor that you just gave that work to. For me, I'm not for that at all. I'm like all or none. Either if you believe in a prestige environment, you don't just give it to somebody who has no regulations. Give the job to somebody. You got to be consistent on that, and governments are not. I mean, China doesn't have environmental laws. We're all on the same planet together. The pollution there eventually comes here. And not only that, I'm thinking, okay, sure, I don't really like what the Chinese government has to offer. I'm not a communist, whatever. But that said, I don't think their people should be living in smog-filled cities, and every time they go out on certain days, their faces burn because of the freaking pollution in the environment, and all their water resources are all completely polluted because they're too greedy to get it that they have to take care of the environment themselves. It's kind of like a pike in a pond. They'll eat themselves into extinction, right? So I'm looking at it, well, to do business with them, which I'm not opposed to doing business with the Chinese. Where I'm opposed is the unfair competition, where we're so heavily regulated here and they have no regulation there. Same thing with Mexico and all that. It's like, we'll do it there because we'll build everything there because they don't have the environmental regulations. It makes everything easier, which is true. It makes everything easier, but it's unfair to us because we're being hypocrites by saying that, we have a clean environment and all this and all that, and then send it over there where, but we just displaced our jobs to a place that, but they're developing nations. Developing nations is such a bullshit excuse for globalists. It's not funny. There is no reason why they can't meet the same standards as us. I mean, we're paying for the infrastructure to go down there. Bombardier, they sent thousands of jobs to Mexico. We paid for that infrastructure. Canada paid for that infrastructure. The Mexicans probably paid for it a bit. So, if we paid for that infrastructure, it should meet our requirements. It should meet our, and if it doesn't, then we shut it down. That type of thing. But then you're putting people out of work and you're harming families. You're missing the point. The point is when in Rome, do as the Romans, but when outside of Rome, carry the Roman flag. You know what I mean? Like that type of thing. You stay consistent. We believe in this clean environment or we don't. And this is where things like CETA will become a problem. Look, I believe Prime Minister Harper got fired, so to speak, for two reasons. Number one, he went against the gun owners. And gun owners were fed up with him. A lot of them just didn't vote. Number two, the farmers, with the Trans-Pacific Trade Partnership coming down the pike, they couldn't vote for Harper. They'd be voting themselves off their own land. CETA is the same. It's the same. The farmers and stuff like that are still worried about it. They don't like these big trade deals. These big trade deals put our farmers out of work because they can't compete with all this cheaper labor coming in. Look, Ontario, I'll use Ontario as an example. 5 out of every 6 apples in Ontario, come from outside the country. Now, why would we be importing apples into Canada in the first place? I got 5, 6, 7 apple trees here. I don't have an orchard. It's just that's how I planted them when I was a kid, type of thing, There's apple trees all over the place around here. Apple orchards. Lush Ontario, like the Greenbelt, the lushest farmland in the world, which is now becoming, suburbia. Case in point, in 1992, when I flew to Los Angeles, I flew from Toronto to San Francisco, and then from San Francisco, I took a bus to Los Angeles, and it was like, I think I saved like $250 on the ticket. It just happened to be San Francisco. It was really cheap to fly to over LA. I don't know why, but it was. Between Ottawa and Toronto, it's like as soon as you left Ottawa, it's like the lights were gone. The city lights were gone. You looked down the airplane and you saw nothing but black. It was and the odd house light here and there. In 2008, when I flew from Ottawa to Toronto to Winnipeg, and it was totally different. It was pretty much nonstop lights from here right through to Toronto. And that's the disappearing of the Greenbelt for real estate. It's really, really bad how it works. I've always explained it like this. The bankers basically want to sell houses. So what they do is they work with the government to regulate farmers to the point where they can't compete, and they basically shut down, and then they sell the land pennies on the dollar through bankruptcy or whatever to the land developers. The land developers then go to the banks, say, we're going to build these houses. Set up some clientele. So it becomes a racket, is really what it is. I'm not against anybody in the housing industry, but like building houses and stuff like that. But you have to understand, building houses before they're sold, it's like building automobiles before they sold. It's supply and demand. You can build as much as you want, but if there's nobody to buy it, But the problem is it'd be different if they were building up, but they're not building up, they're building out. And the problem with building out is it puts you into these lush lands and stuff like that. Now, when CETA comes around, it's not only going to be bad for our country, it's going to be bad for other countries too, because they're beholden to the EU. Now, again, CETA is a one-world government idea, same with Trans-Pacific Trade Partnership. But people rejected Harper because Trudeau said, we're going to be transparent on the Trans-Pacific Trade Partnership. Nobody even knew what the hell a CETA was. Now, all of a sudden, bang, CBC, we're about to pass the trade deal didn't go through. That type of thing. And people are probably saying, what the hell is the CETA thing? Where's all this transparency? If you watch CPAC or listen to the daily Parliament stuff, all you hear is a Trans-Pacific Trade Partnership. Justin Trudeau cannot put this thing through fast enough. His MPs are out there bragging how they got CETA almost passed and the Trans-Pacific Trade Partnership is almost passed, and the Harper government can do it. So there's a bit of a push-me-pull-me going on where the Conservatives are saying, or the Liberals are saying, well, we passed what you couldn't. And the Conservatives are saying, well, you're not doing it fast enough. So there's a bit of a push-me-pull-me. So there's no real objectivity there. Now, that said, there is a guy putting a constitutional challenge. I forget which MP it is. Putting a constitutional challenge saying that this will be not only bad for Canadians because of it'll hurt our farmers, because to sign these big trade deals, what you're doing is, it's like the problem we had with New Zealand and Australia. I think it was more New Zealand with some of the farming things there. And again, I have nothing against my New Zealand brothers and sisters. Canada, Australia, and New Zealand are probably closer together than like-minded than just about any other nations on the planet. Because we're Commonwealth. And then, you bring in the British. But I'd say we're probably more like-minded with the New Zealanders and the Australians than we are with the British. Even though our lineage, of the country, the heritage of the country goes back to Britain. A lot of it, native Britain, France and Ireland and Scotland. These are our big, that's the main fabric of Canada. It's still, even though the demographic is changing, it's still the main thing. But the other thing, too, is how this impacts immigration, everything like that. It means, this is where all your open-door immigration stuff comes from, is from these one-world utopianistic people. Now, Trudeau, I don't think he understands CETA. I'm not saying Justin Trudeau's stupid. He's utopianistic. There's a difference. It means you can explain something to him with science and reason. He'll understand it, but he won't accept it. That type of thing. So the problem we have here with CETA is that it really isn't transparent at all. The constitutional challenge, the idea that some foreign unelected bureaucrat over in the EU or some big corporate mogul somewhere on the other side of the planet, or even here, it doesn't matter, can override our court systems. Either we have a independent country, or we don't. And the fact that they can sue you if they don't make a profit. So CETA is pretty much the smaller baby version of the Trans-Pacific Trade Partnership. So people rejected the Trans-Pacific Trade Partnership. I believe that's why Harper lost. I don't think it was because of him being divisionist. No, you want to see division, you look at the states. Canada's divided, sure, but nothing. Just go watch the old, Thomas Mulcair and Justin Trudeau and Stephen Harper. They don't get along. They don't like each other. They hate each other. But look at how they debated. Even Justin Trudeau, now listen to him. He's still campaigning. He's just like Obama. He wins the election and he's still campaigning. You know what I mean? That's all these guys can do. They're a face in front of the camera. That's all they can do. As far as trade deals and stuff like that, Trudeau will just go whatever his ministers tell him to do. I don't really think he's in charge of the ship. He doesn't really have leadership qualities. He has a lot of, default talking points, but all communists do. They have an answer for everything, but they don't have any details on the answer. They keep it vague. They keep you kind of, they give you the icing. They never give you the cake. You know what I mean? And that type of thing. Now, Trudeau, he isn't communist. He's socialist. He's socialist fascist. Same way Harper was, except where he's more left-leaning. The difference was Harper could add 2 + 2 and making 4. According to Justin Trudeau, 2 + 2 makes 28, and a cat and 2 dogs. That's because puppies don't have wings. So Common Core style education there. And a banana makes a boat. At least there's a shape there. Yeah, there might be hope yet. But that said, this trade deal, is it all bad? I don't know. That's the thing. We don't know if it's all bad or all good because you can't see it. You can't see it all. And that's where, trust me, it will. If NAFTA has screwed our country to the point where it is now, CETA is going to be 10 times worse. Now, the good news in all this, believe it or not, there is good news in this, is that no matter how bad Justin Trudeau screws up the country in the next 4 years, I really don't see him getting another 4 years after. But the problem is there's really no, like in the States, we don't really have any options. Hey, Missy. She's scratching her ear. We don't really have any options of good government. That said, now, I don't know if this is going to, I like what Justin Trudeau did. Yes, hold on before you start bashing me. I am a fair man, okay? One thing I will say is the Liberals, they are pretty much going full bore with their agenda, so in some areas, but they haven't created a single job in Canada. But one thing that Justin Trudeau talked about was election reform and the Senate. Now, Thomas Mulcair wants to do away with the Senate. Why? Because communists don't like anybody challenging their authority. Okay, and I agree. We should do away with the Senate. It's way too expensive for what we get out of it. And really, should 100 people be the last line of reason for a government bill? And if you stuff the Senate full of people that agree with you, full of partisanship, it's no good. Now, one thing that is done is we now have Justin Trudeau elected nonpartisan people to the Senate. He's got 9 new people, 5 women and 4 men. Of course, he's more about gender parity than anything, which I think is the biggest sexist, more sexist than anything. Because women, we have to make sure there's a 50% representation of women, not because they're qualified, but because, So, if a woman's qualified, let her get the job through qualification, no other reason. Minorities, if they're qualified, get the job through qualification. Get rid of all gender equality stuff because it really shows more inequality. And the only way it can work is if you hold back others. So I say just go with whoever's the highest qualified for the job you get. Now, 2,700 people applied for the Senate. 2,700. Now, here's the problem I have, which what he did is good. It's a good thing. But there's a rub, like always. I'm sure, just a little bit I've heard, like the 5 minutes or 2 minutes of talking about it on the CBC. I see what Justin Trudeau did. And basically, rather than appointing his own MPs and MLAs to the Senate, like Harper did and like Chrétien did, what he did was went nonpartisan, meaning we don't know, there's no party loyalty in there. And they're now the biggest demographic apparently in the Senate, where they're going to run the Senate as nonpartisan, which is good. That's what you want, because that's your last voice of reason whenever a bill goes through. The problem is one comes from the Human Rights Organization. These human rights. We have 14 human rights tribunals in Canada, which we should do away with all of them. We don't need them. We've got courts and laws. We don't need these kangaroo courts there. These are run by social justice warriors to the extreme feminists, all the worst of lefties that you could possibly get. On its word, everybody wants human rights, yes, but the problem with these human rights tribunals is they're somehow able to fine people, put people in jail and stuff like that for violations, but these are not official people. These are not people with credentials that go to colleges and universities to get a degree in and become experts in, or have a great amount of service in that industry. No, these are just people that want to join, and they join, and they get to become moderators of society. Very, very, very scary. In other words, you got the leftist utopian social justice warriors running these things. That's some of them, and I look at, of course, they've got all they push is multicultural. There's that new bill C-25. It's a multicultural bill that, again, if you're a white single guy, the future is very grim for us. We're so hated, it's not funny. But what this new Bill C-25 will do is basically any corporation that doesn't have 50% gender and racial parity will have to explain why. So it's already public persecution, rather than saying, what they're saying is it's more important that we have 50% minorities and women hired than, this is like phase 2 of work equity, is what it is. So if you can't prove why you're doing that, there's going to be, at first it'll be just ridicule, then repercussions. Then there'll be fines and whatever, or they'll put you out of business. So you see how this works, right? And these are the type of people that will be running in the Senate. No doubt. So what Justin Trudeau did is he just took people who won't say they're affiliated with the NDP or the Liberals or the Conservatives, which I doubt out of these 9 people, any of them are going to be very conservative-minded. Some of these are judges. These were liberal judges, I'm sure. Look into it for yourself. But we'll have to keep an eye on that. We'll have to actually see. What I see happening with the Senate is if these people run the majority, is not a single, every environmental, global warming tax you can imagine is going to pass. Anything environmentally, it's going to kill our economy. So not a single conservative bill is ever going to pass. Not a single conservative. I can imagine there will be anything to do with gender equality, LGBTQ, all the leftist stuff. That's the stuff that's going to get passed. Environmental laws, they're going to get passed. So that's what's going to get passed. Now, there could be some good, some bad in it, issue by issue. That's where you're going to take it. Sure. But the problem is that it's going to go very progressively left in the Senate. Now, with a Justin Trudeau majority government, this is going to be very bad for us. That said, maybe on the bigger issues, like Trans-Pacific Trade Partnership, CETA, etc., TTIP, TTIP, all that stuff, TTIP, all those trade deals, maybe they might be a voice of reason. Maybe. That type of thing. Maybe on the lawsuit of the Bank of Canada, maybe they might be a voice of reason, but I doubt it. Most of these people usually don't. They can respond emotionally, but they can't respond intellectually. And that's what I don't like about appointees. I think the Senate, if we keep it, should be an elected body. But I'd like to do away with the Senate completely, and do away with the Senate with the idea of one thing and one thing only. Replace it with the people. Why should we let 100 people decide whether a bill is good for the country or not? Let the people vote. Do like Switzerland. Have a referendum. Let the government pass what they want, but if the people don't like it, run a referendum on it. Now, you can do that now in Canada. You can run referendums on it. That's why the Senate is really not needed. You don't need a Governor General, and you don't need a Senate. Governor General is really ceremonial. That's it. Okay, so rather than the Prime Minister going to the Queen and asking if they could dissolve Parliament for the next election or whatever, or early or late or whatever, you get some other guy that you have to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars a year to, probably millions by the time you add up all the benefits, to basically sit on their ass until they've got to go and talk to the Queen every 4 years. Like, you can't even make this shit up. You know what I mean? Like, you really can't make it up. Like, I mean, that's. I get it. Maybe at one point it might have served a purpose in the early founding of the country, but it serves no purpose now. We're an independent country. We don't need permission from the Queen. I get it. There's the lineage. I'm not saying smite the history. The history's a proud history, but it's time to modernize. Let's just do our own thing. You know what I mean? Do away with stuff like that. I mean, you got people that dying waiting for treatment in hospitals, and we waste money on stuff like that for the sake of. And it doesn't even really put out that much of an image. You know what I mean? So that's what's going on right now in Canada, and the CETA thing is a big deal. Now, should CETA be passed, and it will be, Trans-Pacific Trade Partnership be passed, and it will be, I think there's only one way to get rid of it. Number one, the people have to completely reject it. Number two, the people have to reject the people that are in power. You can't vote Liberal, you can't vote Conservative, you can't vote NDP, you can't vote Green Party, you can't vote any of these parties anymore. You really just can't vote for them. I know it gets to the point where, but if we don't vote for this guy or that guy, we got nobody else to vote for. And you're right, there's very few. There's a few libertarian candidates, there's communist parties, there's all kinds of leftist parties out there. Sure. And it only takes 270 some odd signatures to create a political party in Canada. Now, I would like to start a nationalist party myself. I would really like to do that. A Canada First party. Now, what I think is going to happen in 4 years really depends on what happens after the 2016 election on October 8th in the States. If Donald Trump was to get in, which he's not, but if he was somehow to get in, a lot of bad things are going to happen. Economic collapse, except civil race wars down there, all that stuff. If Hillary Clinton gets in, which she is most likely to get in because of the way the media is spinning it, the majority of people are probably still not in the know. Problem is, there's too many people that know that it's rigged. But they're going to rig the election for Hillary Clinton. They're already doing it. Like, it's very, very clear. Down there in Texas, for example, they're demanding either paper ballots or to get rid of all George Soros machines that are going to be coming in. Because nobody, people are rejecting George Soros. This man shouldn't even be. This man should have been deserves a death penalty 1,000,000 times over for the criminality he does. He's one of the most evil human beings on the planet, and yes, he is at the top of it. Now, he's just the go-to guy. He does this for other people. He does this for the Rothschilds, Rockefellers, and a whole host of other people behind the curtain. And the thing about that is, these people. Somebody put a good point that they're so secure in their power that when they're out in public, they're not nervous at all because they believe they're untouchable. But I don't think that's going to live very much longer. I say by 2018, even though they want a one-world currency, the only way to do that is destroy every single economy on the planet. Problem is they did it in the digital age, and some of these old dinosaurs don't understand media. They understand psychology, they understand economics, they understand war, they understand that stuff, but they don't understand how quick information is transferred nowadays. And because of that, they don't realize how many people will know who did it. And that's the thing. You have the CBC out there saying how great the economy is doing, but yet they always give you bad news, how many jobs are being lost. So there is no great economy recovery. So if Donald Trump gets in and he does 1% of what he's talking about, Canadians will see it and will say, you know what, those are good ideas. Yeah, that's a better way, term limits, that type of thing. In Canada, we do have a little bit more term limits than what they do in the States. In some areas, for example, prime ministers can run 3 terms. In Canada, or they might be able to run indefinitely. They used to be able to run indefinitely. I think it's 3 terms now. In the States, they're only allowed 2. Or no, I think they can run indefinitely here. So we need to change that. I say you get 4 years, period. 4 years is 8 years of any one person is time for a change. It's just 4 years. You can have the same parties, but you can that type of thing. But we need new parties in Canada. We need a nationalist party. Somebody who's going to look at these trade deals and say, if we can't show it to the public, we're not going to even talk about it. That type of thing. We're not even going to negotiate. And these things will only benefit. It's billions and billions of dollars. But that billions and billions of dollars doesn't go to the Canadian public. It goes to, what they do is they use that to basically fund the corporations who can then rip the resources out of the ground for pennies on the dollar on other nations. It's exploitation and it's not a win-win-win situation for everybody. It's the big people are going to control everything. And the worst of it is we're paying for it. These big corporations wouldn't last a second. They're welfare recipients. These Fortune 500 companies, they don't make money. They lose money. That's all they do is lose money. That's why I don't believe in too big to fail. That's why you need a nationalist party in Canada. Now, we'll have to keep an eye on the Senate to see if there is actual voices of reason in there. Basically, Trudeau did restore it to its original concept, which was supposed to be the last voice of reason, which I agree with that. The problem is I don't like a prime minister appointing these people, whether they say they're nonpartisan or not. He's going to appoint people that are as leftist as possible, in line with them. It's different if the people, I think the senators, if we keep them at all, they should be elected. Should be yes, it's a little more expensive to do it that way, but you get better quality. The people represent, out of 2,700 people, you take 4 years to find the people that you want for the next 4 years. That's fine. And the people that are really, the people that are going to rise to the top very quickly, it'll go from like 2,700 people down to like a few hundred in a week or two. It's like, okay, well, this person has a plan, they have this, they have that, we like this. And you're going to have front runners. The other thing is campaign donations. That's something else I'd like to see changed. I don't think people should be allowed to donate to the party. I don't think corporations or special interest groups should be allowed to donate to a party. I say the government gives each candidate the equal amount of money. They spend it, they blow it senselessly, then they'll clearly show that they can't manage a campaign. The campaigns don't need to be that long. They're not that long here in Canada anyway. But that said, with a nationalist party, we could probably do, following my fiscal ideals, my more libertarian ideals, as well as my nationalistic ideals, I bet you we could have a small party with a handful of people and run the government 10 times better. First off, audit the government, starting with the Prime Minister, work your way down. Got to audit the Queen. We got to audit everybody. Where's all that money going? Anywhere you can't figure out where the money's going, just cut off that much funding. Just that alone will probably balance the budget. People say, well, yeah, but then this will fail, that fail. We need that money. Well, as soon as you hear, well, it's too big to audit, we can't figure out where everything goes, you start with that person. You audit that person first. No. If Sir John A. Macdonald could keep yes, the government was nowhere near as ridiculously big as it is now. He was able to run a tight ship. I mean, if government employees back in the day went out and had lunch somewhere, they had to bring receipts back for everything. Every cent was accounted for pretty much under Sir John A. Macdonald. If you use just the way he did it, it'll work nowadays. Now, it means, will it work right away overnight? No, because there's a lot of government credit cards out there that need to be put a kibosh to, Does it slow down things every time everything's got to get approved? Yes, but that also encourages you to shrink government so you don't have to keep it so big. So, a step in the right direction, yes. Nonpartisanship in the Senate. But who gets in there it should be up to the people. I say do away with the Senate and go with direct democracy like Switzerland. Let the people vote on the issues. In fact, we don't even really need Parliament. We don't even really need all these politicians. We can have 1/10 of the politicians and run it better by switching the way we do that. Rather than have a meeting to decide the next meeting to pass a bill that nobody wants, and make it so confusing that people can't follow it, you keep it simple. You put, here's the bill we want to pass. Here's what's in it. Here's how it works. Let the people decide. You have 6 months to decide it. You vote it in. You vote it out. Here's option A, B, C, whatever. You do that every 6 months, year, whatever. It's better than voting every 4 years. It gets the populace completely active in the thing. And of course, you would say, well, you can't just vote in anything and everything. It has to go and meet the constitutional value. You can't, you can't just vote like say, okay, we're going to vote to do this, and then okay, well, no, you got to stick with the Constitution. So everything would still have to stay within the rule of law and Constitution. You can't just run like a dictatorship. But you could change your laws. You can even have an evolving Constitution if you wanted. Again, I do like what Switzerland does in that sense. They do have kind of a good base to start with. Is it perfect? No, there's no such thing as the perfect political system. There is none. There is none. But you can unburden the system a lot. I mean, our government is just way too big. And it's just government is welfare. You have to look at, if you're a government employee, you cannot exist without the private sector there. The problem is the private sector cannot afford the average $140,000 a year it costs per government employee. And having 3 levels of government on top of that, every time you hear, oh, it's just this tax will only cost the average Canadian $2 a year. That's fine, but when you do that 1,000 times a year, you know what I mean? And that's what we're getting with the carbon tax. They already had carbon taxes, now they're bringing on more carbon taxes on top of the carbon taxes on top of the taxes. Like, it's just ridiculous. So the only way to get rid of that stuff is you need a nationalistic party who's going to put Canada first. And we don't have that right now. We have globalists, or we have batshit crazy leftist environmentalists. I'm not against environmentalism, but there has to be some reasonability about it. This idea, don't touch a blade of grass, you can't touch a single resource, whatever. Sure, protest that, but then, here's the thing, that's also what, holds us back. Canada should be a completely 100% self-sufficient country. There's almost no resources we don't have here. That said, doesn't mean we rip up every resource just for the almighty dollar. We have to strike that balance. Now, the thing is that you also have to keep in mind is, why are we in OPEC? We should be selling our oil in our own currency. It would make our currency stronger. Oh, that'll hurt exports, but, I want to buy 3 Ferraris this week. How much is that going to cost? $8 Canadian? You laugh, but that can happen. The Chinese, for example, they devalue their currency purposely by buying U.S. treasuries. That's one way they do it. If they didn't, their currency would go... Look, when I was a kid, everything was made in Japan. Everything was made in Japan. Then Japan got too wealthy, their currency went too high, and now Japan's been in pretty much shambles ever since. They're one of the biggest purchasers of U.S. debt. It's just, and they're going to quantitative easing. I mean, a watermelon there is like $50 to $100. Like it's like Venezuela right now. They're starting to build. They're starting to go Zimbabwe wise, where their smallest denomination I think is going to be $1,000 bill. I remember when I was a kid, teachers asked me why was apparently things have improved in Mexico with all the trade deals and stuff like that, like NAFTA. And the North American Union. I'm not for the North American Union. It gives up too much sovereignty. I don't want free border travel here, there, and everywhere. I want to have my own country, and that's I want to protect the value system here. I have nothing against the Mexicans. I don't want to do the same to them either, and I don't want to do the same to the states. There's a reason why countries exist. There's a reason why borders exist. And if you try these globalists that want to dissolve all that, create so much destabilization, it's not funny. You can see it through Europe right now. I mean, they're on the brink of civil war in many European countries over the migrant crisis. These migrants are just complete nightmares. Now, that they wouldn't be migrants had U.S. foreign policy and Israeli foreign policy intervened to do regime change throughout the Middle East. This is the thing. This is the thing. And, the whole Middle Eastern wars are all a lie anyways, for the Odin Yan Plan Greater Israel Project, to save the petrodollar, etc., etc. That said, selling there's a couple of ways you can sell your resources outside the country. You could sell it in your own currency, or you could take gold, silver, whatever, or other goods and services, barter and trade. You give us steel, we'll give you lumber, that type of thing. Fine, you can. That's the way the trade used to work, and it worked fine for hundreds of years that way. Was it perfect? No, there's no such thing as the perfect system. But that said, these inflated government projects all over the place just create so much hell for the private sector. And you have to understand, it's the next 3 generations that are going to have to pay for this. So every free thing we get now, my nephew has to pay for it, his kids are going to have to pay for it, their kids are going to have to pay for it. You know, we need to take the hit. You know, we need to take the hit, not them. We hurt now, we do it for the future, and we do better later. That said, IMF, why are we in the IMF? We don't need to be in the IMF. We give NATO, why are we in NATO? We don't need to be in NATO. NORAD makes sense, NATO does not. The money we waste on NATO we could be putting into NORAD and into our own military, so we wouldn't need NORAD, that type of thing. These kind of trade deals, and you see, one thing I will say though, Canada is trying to move away from, the two biggest trade partners on the planet is Canada and the United States. We do 80% trade with each other, and more trade than probably any other bordering nation. Not this nation and the nation over there, but bordering nations. We are the largest trade partners on the world. At current, so they say. But that said, Canada is trying to expand outside. Now, under Harper, we went from, I think, 5 global trade deals to 44 global trade deals, which I'm not against trade deals. What I'm against is loss of sovereignty. Now, when Harper said there is no Canadian economy, there's only a global economy, he was kind of right in context. But that said, if Harper was a nationalist instead of a globalist, he would have been excellent prime minister. Because he would have put our interests first. That said, he wasn't a bad negotiator for most of these trade deals. However, same problem, insourcing and outsourcing, sending our jobs over there. I'll finish up with this. The type of things that Harper did, like the shipbuilding program, which I don't know what's going on with that right now because, and if you guys know, let me know. I haven't had the time to look into it. But apparently it got grinded to a halt under Trudeau. But now what I'm hearing is new warships, and it looks like, my hunch is this: we're going to buy some old American warships. They're talking about building warships, but I'm like, we already got a shipbuilding procurement program. These are state-of-the-art warships. So what I think is Trudeau did is probably canceled those warships. So we probably got some hulls sitting there. These ships were supposed to be finished by about 2018, 2020 at best. But the holdups was we didn't have enough skilled people to work on them because we got rid of that sector of the economy. But that said, Halifax is supposed to be getting the contract for these warships. But what warship? But we already got a warship program. What's going on with that? So I don't know. But it looks like that they're probably just going to build some Ollie Burke class Aegis. The Aegis is outdated. It's a good warship, don't get me wrong, but it's outdated. Why would we buy Ollie Burke class warships and then not just take our domestic warships and upgrade them? You know what I mean? It's the same thing. You could put a new gun on it, put new electronics and radar and stuff like that. Those Halifax frigates are excellent. They're fast, they're maneuverable, lots of firepower. Our tribal class destroyers, although we've only got, I think, 2 out of the 3 left. One we sunk because it was decommissioned. But the hulls are old. The hulls are from the 1960s, 1970s. But the thing is I don't mind those kind of big make-work projects, but there needs to be a couple things going on here. Number one, it needs to be, now if Trudeau does this, if Trudeau was to restore the Bank of Canada, that would probably be the best thing for Canada. But I don't think he's going to do it, because interest rates are low now. Well, we know what's better than low interest rates? No interest rates. Credit your money from the government. You can't from the Bank of Canada the way we used to do it before his father took power. And if we did that, then you could fund these warships so much. I think we used to go 5% of GDP of new money every year, which really slows down things. It means you can only do so much per year, or else you're printing too much money and you're going to get inflation or deflation. Inflation. So that's the way we used to do it. And if we went back to that, you have a big public works project like warships. And trust me, I'm not a warmonger. I think we should have a non-interventionist policy, completely neutral country like Switzerland. Never mind going around the world doing regime change or fighting this or fighting that. Protect our borders, turn it inward in the sense of not against the people, but against the borders. You want to come into our country, we're going to vet you, we're going to have more, we want to know everything about everybody coming into the country, what they're doing here, what their purpose is, that type of thing. Stricken up the immigration, restore the Bank of Canada so that we credit money into existence instead of loan it into existence. Build our warships so that, again, we have 3 oceans, 3 major oceans to defend, Now, the southern border of Canada, we don't really have to worry too much. The Americans actually do more on the security than we do. So, but that said, either you have a country or you don't. So I'm okay with a warship program, but why would we be starting another warship program when we already have one? Just finish what we got. Okay, we can't finish it by 2018, fine. Finish it by 2020. Okay, whatever. That type of thing. And you have those kind of warship programs. We need a new tank program, a fighter program. Do those, but do them at a rate that, okay, well, here's what we're going to do. We're not going to reinvent the wheel. We're going to refine the wheel like the Russians do. The Russians build an Su-27, excellent airplane. Starts getting dated, they turn it into an Su-33 for the naval. Okay, put some forward canards on it, give it a little more low-speed maneuverability, yada, yada, yada. Okay, that thing's getting dated, let's build the Su-37, and then reclassify it as the Su-35. Now let's build a PAC FA-50, which is, still doesn't have the full designation yet of what this thing is. But basically, it's a derivative of, the lineage goes back to the Su-27. And the Su-27 is a lineage of the Su-15 or Flagon. Not identical, but the Su-27 line is basically what it is now, is refinement. It's not reinventing a new airplane. So what do? Well, we've got most of the tooling for the CF-18s, which are slightly different than the American F-18. Not by much. Okay, well, what do we need to do? Well, number one, the airplane itself isn't bad. There's nothing wrong with the CF-18 at all. It's just the newest one is from 1987. That's your problem, is they're old. So we got most of the tooling, I'm pretty sure, still kicking around. Redesign it. Give it the 25% more wing area like on the new Super Hornets. Okay, fine. There you go. Now you got more wing loading, better stuff like that. Sure. You could have a prototype flying in 5 months. You could have a full fighter program done in 2 years. 2 years. All you do, okay, well, we got technology from the F-35. Okay, we'll put that into a more analog frame. Okay, well, the CF-18 isn't stealthy enough. Okay, smooth it out. Change the nose cone. Little things like that. It's not a big deal. The designer of the A-10 and the F-16, General Dynamics guy, he said, fighters shouldn't be billions and billions of dollars. They shouldn't be billions and billions of dollars. They should be a few million at best. Now that said, yes, it's still like 40 million for a freaking 40 to 50 million for a freaking F-16. But that's, I think, just to do with the currency problem. But that said, an F-16 when it came in on the line, I think they were like 16 or 12 million bucks or whatever they were. Don't quote me on the price, but they were cheaper. They were an alternative to the F-14s and stuff like that. Although one's a Navy airplane, the other's Air Force. But you get the idea. It was cheaper to run. It was cheaper to build. The A-10, they were building them for like $1 million. That's still a lot of money, $1 million. But Canada, I think Canada should have probably 2,000. At $1 million a piece, 200 million bucks, you have 2,000. You have 2,000 A-10s. I mean, just modernize the radars and make them so that they can jam radars and stuff like that. You got yourself a hell of a ground. Air Force, easy to fly, low maintenance, takes off, lands everywhere. A frogfoot. The Russians use the frogfoot. It's the airplane you fly until something else, until the MiG-29 opens up, or whatever. You fly that. You can fly a frogfoot for years, 1,500 hours a year on those things. They don't cost anything to produce. Really, they're cheap to run. They're cheap to produce. They're simple to upgrade. That type of thing. They're reliable. So make an Air Force version of the CF-18 just the way it is now. No folding wings, no tail hook, get rid of all that. So you're getting rid of parts, so that makes it cheaper. You're removing complexity, so that lowers maintenance. And it's new, Put square intakes on it, make it a little bit more stealthy, whatever. More wing area, again, easier stuff. And you can use existing parts, that type of thing. Now, getting back to the warship, same thing. These type of programs, these are just 2 types of programs. What other programs could we do? Well, number one, we could start working on a fusion reactor so that we could have free, independent energy from oil. I'm all for the big giant power dams and stuff like that. I'm for those big network projects. Recycling. Here's a government program that we don't do enough of. Recycling and food production. Now, again, you have to contrast it with your farmers. But government-built greenhouses so you can grow food all year round. Feed the world for free. You know what I mean? Like almost make food almost free. Like just lower that cost. There's no reason why a country the size of Canada, why anybody should go hungry in Canada. Get some natives, some Inuit, go out, clobber a few seals, send the seal meat to the soup kitchens. Pay the natives, pay them to do it. Keep it in a balanced. There's a few millions, 100. Well, it's not 100 million. I forget how many seals there are on the. But they wreak havoc on the fish populations if you have too many seals. So, population management. Okay, well, the natives, the Inuit can only eat so much seal meat per year. Okay, well, we'll pay them instead of giving them a welfare check or whatever. We'll pay them to go and go get some seals. I know some people don't like the stuff like that. Use the hides. They can make clothing with it. They can make winter jackets, and we promote that. And trust me, seal skin jackets can be pretty darn good. It's a natural resource. You keep it in population check so it doesn't that they don't overhunt. And when they have too much meat, you pay for the government pays for the transportation of the meat to soup kitchens. Trust me, a homeless guy eating seal meat, it'll fatten him up. It'll fatten him up. These are programs I want to see the government do. That type of stuff. Public housing, no, but shelters, yes. The idea of the housing industry itself, we have to stop mass immigration. We don't need any more people in Canada. We can't keep up to it. We don't have the economy. To bring people in just so they can buy more houses is stupid because it's the most ungreen thing we can do. I'm far from what you would call a tree hugger, but I am in touch with the land. I do hunt, I fish, I trap, I do that kind of stuff. I don't do it all the time, but I do like having a green environment. I'm willing to give up a little bit of technology in order to have that, sure. But I'm also, you want to make an egg, you got to break you want to make an omelet, you have to break an egg. And yes, the resources we have should be able to sustain us. There's no reason for us to not be using our own resources like oil and gas and whatever. Right now, there's like all this methane that they're trying to figure out how to extract that. I mean, it's great. Look, pig farmers, they use the methane from the pig shit to run the farm. Innovation like that, that's what we need to do. Get back to the basics. Rooftop gardens throughout the cities. Make it a government project. Again, so much of GDP. You have all these ongoing projects that actually is very egalitarian, which most people do like benefiting from. And it won't necessarily keep costs low, but you can keep costs low by restoring the Bank of Canada. So when I hear Trudeau's talk about restoring the Bank of Canada, then we're on the path of the thing. Now, I know I went off topic a bit, or a lot, but it kind of gives you an idea of what's going on in Canada here. Now, one last thing I will say, though, is no matter how much damage Trudeau does in 4 years, it's not the first 4 years that is the problem. This is the 4 years where we need to get a nationalistic party started so that they can run in 2020 for the next election. Myself, again, I'm not enough of a front man to be able to do this, but I would like to see a nationalistic party in Canada. The problem is you can't call it a nationalistic party. You have to have nationalistic policies, but you can't call it. You have to go cloak and dagger nowadays. Not necessarily lie, but you have to go. Like, for example, the Green Party. They're not going to tell you, or the NDP. Their party started basically supported. They're a communist party, is what they are. It's just they couldn't say that back when they started because it was illegal to say that you were affiliated with the Communist Party back at the time. So they became the New Democratic Party. And the problem with that is that people don't know what they're voting for. So if you can't call yourself a nationalist party, well, you can call yourself a Canada First Party, which I think that's already been taken, but. Some of these parties already exist. I think they just need to be reformed. The Nationalist Party of Canada is to 1933 Germany. Too many Canadian grandfathers died fighting Nazis. There's no way that's ever going to fly. But it doesn't mean their policies are all bad. What they need to do is restructure and say, okay, well, do away with anything to do with Nazi Germany at all. And restructure the party. That's why you need a new party because, as soon as you get affiliated, oh yeah, but you guys were a Nazi party, and not everybody's. I'm more libertarian than I'll ever be socialist. But I'm very nationalist when it comes to borders and immigration. After that, as much libertarian as possible. I put out a platform. I think most people would. No, you're never going to get most people or 100% of people on board with you. But gun laws, get rid of Bill C-68, for example, and replace it with training. We don't care what kind of firearm you own. As long as you have the training to handle it safely. They want to do a background check because people still, I don't think statistically it doesn't help you. But we'll keep the background check because, whatever. Where you can safely discharge a firearm, we don't care what you're discharging. Maybe a little bit of regulation on the type of ammo. I don't think people should be using incendiary ammo in the bush. It cause bush fires. Same with tracer rounds. They cause bush fires. You see it in the States all the time. So things like that. Hunting with full metal jackets, not allowed like it is now. Proper hunting ammunition, proper target ammunition. Okay, fine. That stuff you can regulate. Where you can shoot, safely, like not shooting, shooting X, Y, Z. Nobody cares about those regulations. People are okay with that regulations. But this gun's scarier than that gun, so we'll ban it? No. So you're going to win people there. The farmers, help the farmers by getting some of the regulations out of their way. That type of thing. Allow business to thrive. I love using the taxi cab thing. Get rid of that. If somebody could tell me what that $85,000 or to $130,000 license plate on a taxi cab, what that pays for, other than government bureaucracy, what does that pay for? Get rid of that, and you'll have so many cabbies. Uber. That's why I like Uber. This is how you allow business to thrive. Is there problems with it? Yes, but you get the idea. There's so many things like that, like the CRTC, the way they like $36,000 to buy a license to be a radio announcer or whatever. Start your own channel. That stuff. Do away with that stuff. Allow business to thrive. Free market, that type of thing. Regulation where environmental is concerned, so that you're not polluting your environment. That type of thing. Safety and environment. If it doesn't pertain to safety or environmental, there's no point in having a regulation. And that's the problem with government. It's regulation on top of regulation for the sake of regulation to regulate, with a tax on top of a tax on top of a tax. So anyway, I'll leave it at that. So anyway, if you like this kind of content, please consider making a donation to the channel. Links down below. Thank you so much to everybody else. Next to that, rate, subscribe, share, comment, like. Be true to yourself. Be true to others. Always do the right thing, and have yourselves a great day. Good day. Hi, and welcome. Yeah, it snowed last night. I had to drive home, not very far, but I had to drive home in my first kind of blizzard last night. I don't think it's going to stay, but it's supposed to turn to rain and stuff like that. So just enough to make it really wet and miserable. Miserable. Thus is winter knocking at your door. In fact, it's going to clog your door, and you won't be able to get out ever again until spring. All right, so I thought I'd make this video. I see some people covering it, and I've mentioned it a few times and stuff like that, but there's a couple of things going on here in Canada that I think most Canadians are completely oblivious. Like, I don't really think that many people watch the CBC, so they have no idea what's really going on. Right now we have this big, huge trade deal going through CETA, and if you don't know what CETA is, that's okay, because nobody does. All they tell you is, it's going to be billions of dollars in trade and stuff like that. We know there's a small area in Brussels that is being a stick in the mud about it, which is probably for good reasons. And CETA is basically the kind of Trans-Pacific Trade Partnership ×2, but it's more between Canada and Europe, or the European Union. And basically, like the other ones, it's not transparent. There's a whole bunch of things in it that what you can see. There's a whole bunch of things in it that are not good for Canadian sovereignty, but since when has our governments ever cared about Canadian sovereignty, right? So it's how fast can we sell the country away? Rip the resources out of the ground, it's always... I agree with what Ronald Reagan said. Government has no business being in business. It shouldn't be doing trade deals. It should be setting the rules for trade deals, but let them happen naturally. Now, the reason why I don't like the idea of this thing is because it allows foreign companies and bureaucrats to sue our country and overrides our courts. And there is a constitutional challenge on this thing. However, you won't hear about that on the CBC. That's the news out of it. The deal failed and stuff like that to be signed, but you got say, oh no, it's going to be signed now. But on the other, when you start listening to other channels and stuff like that, and other people talking about it, like, no, they're not even close to getting it signed. So it's kind of one of those things that it's been tied up for a long time. These big trade deals, I don't think are going to go through anyway. They're like an omnibus package for a trade deal. It's like take it all or take none, right? And the problem with that is that there's so many little things in there that you'd be better off to go after a few things at a time and work those out one at a time. It's a little bit slower in some ways, but at least, like for example, rather than waiting 10 years to pass one deal, you could have little deals passed every year, and that could work. I'm not against trade per se. Where I take issue is when it basically CETA will be worse than NAFTA. Basically, we already gave all our high-tech jobs away to over there somewhere. You know, China, Mexico, Brazil, India. We're sending all our jobs out of the country, which is leaving us with a service sector economy, which I even remember economists back in the 80s talking about how we're going to change it to a service sector economy. But who gave them the right to do that? You know what I mean? And how did they accomplish it? Well, it's simple. You increase regulation to the point where nobody can either compete, open up their own business, or you know, if they want to buy gas from somebody else, you increase environmental regulations here to put us out of business here. But yet you turned a blind eye to the third world country with the slave labor that you just gave that work to. For me, I'm not for that at all. I'm like all or none. Either if you believe in a prestige environment, you don't just give it to somebody who has no regulations. Give the job to somebody. You know, you got to be consistent on that, and governments are not. I mean, China doesn't have environmental laws. We're all on the same planet together. The pollution there eventually comes here. And not only that, I'm thinking, okay, sure, I don't really like what the Chinese government has to offer. I'm not a communist, whatever. But that said, I don't think their people should be living in smog-filled cities, and every time they go out certain days, their faces burn because of the freaking pollution in the environment, and all their water resources are all completely polluted because they're too greedy to get it that they have to take care of the environment themselves. You know, it's kind of like a pike in a pond to lead themselves into extinction, right? So I'm looking at it, well, to do business with them, which I'm not opposed to doing business with the Chinese. Where I'm opposed is the unfair competition, where we're so heavily regulated here and they have no regulation there. Same thing with Mexico and all that. You know, it's like, we'll do it there because you know, we'll build everything there because they don't have the environmental regulations. It makes everything easier, which is true. It makes everything easier, but it's unfair to us because we're being hypocrites by saying that, oh, we have a clean environment and all this and all that, and then send it over there where, okay, yeah, but we just displaced our jobs to a place that, oh yeah, but they're developing nations. Developing nations is such a bullshit excuse for globalists. It's not funny. There is no reason why they can't meet the same standards as us. I mean, we're paying for the infrastructure to go down there. Bombardier, you know, they sent thousands of jobs to Mexico. We paid for that infrastructure. Canada paid for that infrastructure. The Mexicans probably paid for it a bit. So, if we paid for that infrastructure, it should meet our requirements. It should meet our, you know, and if it doesn't, then we shut it down. You know, that type of thing. Oh, but then you're putting people out of work and you're harming families. You're missing the point. The point is do, you know, when in Rome, do as the Romans, but when outside of Rome, you know, carry the Roman flag. You know what I mean? Like that type of thing. You stay consistent. We believe in this clean environment or we don't. And this is where things like CETA will become a problem. Look, I believe Prime Minister Harper got fired, so to speak, for two reasons. Number one, he went against the gun owners, and gun owners were fed up with it. A lot of them just didn't vote. Number two, the farmers, with the Trans-Pacific Trade Partnership coming down the pike, they couldn't vote for Harper. They'd be voting themselves off their own land. CETA is the same. It's the same. The farmers and stuff like that are still worried about it. They don't like these big trade deals. These big trade deals put our farmers out of work because they can't compete with all this cheaper labor coming in. Look, Ontario, I'll use Ontario as an example. 5 out of every 6 apples in Ontario, okay, come from outside the country. Now, why would we be importing apples into Canada in the first place? I got 5, 6, 7 apple trees here. I don't have an orchard. It's just, that's how I planted them when I was a kid, type of thing, you know. There's apple trees all over the place around here. Apple orchards, lush Ontario, like the Greenbelt, the lushest farmland in the world, which is now becoming, suburbia, you know. Case in point, in 1992, when I flew to Los Angeles, or